gentlemen, I think the case brought by UGM is the exception and not the rule. Because their only example was, in terms of crises, in terms of a natural disaster that inflicted millions of people, they helped. No duh, they are people too, ladies and gentlemen. So morally, without them being a religious organization, they would help, ladies and gentlemen. But what they should analyze, and that's what we're going to analyze, is, in normal circumstances, what will they do? In the circumstance, for example, in the status quo, where everything's fine and dandy, where will they allocate their budget? How will they do so? Do they have experience? So the question is, are they willing? The question is not, are they willing? But the question is, can they do it, and can they do it well? And the answer is clearly no. I'm going to bring two splits. First of all, I'm going to say why this is against the mandate of the government from the people, which is fair governance. Second of all, I'm going to say how the government is the only actor who can effectively deliver welfare in a distributive manner. But before that, rebuttal. Ladies and gentlemen, their main idea of why they can and they're eager to help, or they're actually accountable to help, is because they fear God. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a weak argumentation to bring up, because fearing God is very relative, and even if they said they have an audit committee, we say that the government is more structured that way. And especially if they bring a case of Indonesia, there's a financial regulatory board in the department, outside the department, and also a third commission, which to control the commission that controlled the finances, ladies and gentlemen. So it's exactly that complex, and it's going to be a little bit harder if they want to do anything bad. An example of a religious leader that doesn't fear God was the leader of FPI, an Indonesian extremist group. He has porn, ladies and gentlemen. So the idea of fearing God isn't universal and isn't a main reason why you should trust these religious organizations. It should be on when is it fair or not? And second of all, can they do it or not? On fair, they said that it's a religious institution, thus they're going to help people such as the victims in the Aceh tsunami. But once again, that's an exception, not the rule. And second of all, when you look on how they distribute, they're going to be very, very discriminative, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to be biasly allocated. Why? Because I'm not sure that a Muslim organization would want to give some of the money that the government gave to build a church next door to a mosque. Right? So they're going to be very biased, especially when they see, even if they see that these Christians or these Buddhists or whatever religion they come from need another asset or need another facility, ladies and gentlemen. But before I go on, I'm pretty much done with rebuttal, going to my speech, but before that, yeah.
The religious institution needs to be able enough to, for example, building a school and at the end provide better and a decent education. We think that they're really able and really fair in helping government to distribute the welfare. That's one form.
Yeah, well, if they're able, then do it themselves. I mean, it doesn't really prove that why the government has to give them money, because they're able, ladies and gentlemen. I am able to teach debate a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. But that doesn't mean the government gives me money to proliferate critical thinking, right? So it has to be whether or not it's effective and distributive in a way that the government wants it to be, right? So going in my first split, why is it against the mandate of fair governance? This directly clashes to that POI, really. When you say the mandate of government is to what? Provide rights, right? Provide rights unbiasedly. That's why you have a taxation system that goes inclined or progressive but fair, right? Because the poor can afford to pay much tax, but the richer can. That's why we have a fair judicial system, sort of, because every part of the society should be equal in the front of law. But when you give these even a fraction of that money to religious institutions, what will happen? Because we think that those organizations is going to have a set of preferences. Why? First of all, the means of conduct. Why? Because when you look at how Muslim organizations conduct their business, it's within the Sharia law. I'm not sure about other organizations, but I'm pretty sure there's a set of rules that they need to abide to, right? So that hampers the targets. That hampers what can you achieve, right? What targets or goals you're going to take and you're going to try to achieve. And second of all, the goals and targets of these organizations are different, because sometimes when governments want to create an area, for example, they want to build it, and they say the natural resources there is good, for example, activities that aren't religiously well, for example, maybe gambling to some extent, maybe the creation of alcohol, right, breweries, right? So why would religious institutions create these facilities, even though they can create welfare, even though they can create a workforce, even though they can create income for the government? That is something that they do not focus on, and they're not willing to focus on. So that is bad. Why? Because first of all, like I said, they discriminate, right? So even though they're going to say we're going to give a certain percentage of a certain budget to certain religious groups determined by the percentage in that country. pretty confusing, but that's probably how they're going to do it. Take you later. But that also is unfair. Why? Even though it's percentage-based and, quantity-based, we see that sometimes in some circumstances, some religious groups needs more money than the rest, even though they're a smaller group, right? Because you can't really always determine just because you have a smaller, group of people does not mean the needs of that people is just as small or can be reflected by that percentage. Sometimes it increases, sometimes it decreases, and this is against the fair, the backlash of how a government should be fair because it doesn't cater to all actors, right? It's unfair because some groups of society will get more benefits than the rest because the benefits are not open to other religions. The benefits are only focused on a certain part of society, a certain religious group, or amount of followers. Yeah.
We think when we said we are going to make the cooperation, it means that there is the platform and discussion within the government program and also this religious institution. So we think that there is no such kind of a clashing development at the end.
Right. So, what's the motion? Right. Should use, right? So they're going to have negotiations and they're going to allow a sort of cooperation, right? But this is my second split. More pragmatic. It's a more effective way to distribute welfare directly clashing here. Why? Because when you look at the government, what do they have? They have regional bodies, they have regional governments, they have ministries, departments, etc. Going from center into the most decentralized part of society, even when those organizations aren't there, right? They have a statistical body to provide them information. They have a controlled plan. They have projects will have short-term, long-term goals, etc. They have information, ladies and gentlemen. Their goals are integrated. They know what they want to achieve from top to bottom, right? So when you look at religious organizations, what they do, even though they're going to give money, or even though they're going to cooperate, first of all, they need to be in line with the goals and values, which is going to be a waste of time, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen. But second of all, these organizations are sort of scattered. They have different interests and different regions, right? So when you focus on the ability, the experience of government, in terms of planning, in terms of experience, in terms of how they can reach out to the smallest parts of society fairly, we think that welfare would be better distributed if it's solely in the hands of government, right? If they want to help, not closing the opportunity for them to help, but please use their own money and not the taxpayers' money, because that should be used for universal good, which the government can provide.